Hey everybody, welcome back to Big Board. It's the mountain edition, I guess. We're sitting at 9,200 feet. A few, 3,000, what's that, 3,000 meters thereabouts, 2,700 meters, I think. I can't remember. I can't do my metric math on the fly. And we're looking at the last Blitzkrieg, which was certainly not in the mountains. But I've got this smaller scenario set up. The last Gamble's the Muse offensive. What is it? What's it called? The Battle Before the Muse. It runs December 23 through 26. So it kind of skips all of the highly structured stuff that you would typically find in most bulge games where, Conf Group Piper can do A, B, and C, and Allied Unit X, Y, and Z cannot move until turn whenever, and there's no movement on this turn and some movement on that turn, and so you kind of skip all that stuff. And this game is replete with all of those types of restrictions because that's what happened, right? And if you want to capture the historical nuance, was nuance the right word? No, the actual historical facts, I think you have to have all of those rules and conditions and circumstances laid out for you. It's how they're applied and how they're presented to you, I think, that makes a big difference in terms of a game's playability, right? And we're not talking about any of that right now. I just wanted to mention that. I looked at Time for Trumpets. I had that set up trying to play the campaign off the bat, and got pretty overwhelmed and frustrated with that exercise just because it was a difficult challenge to kind of come to grips with all of that business. Here, I think there's some very nice rule summary charts by turn and by force, what can and what rules do and don't apply on a given turn. And that allows you then to go back, reference those rules, and see, okay, I can do this with this conf group, and I can do that with this allied formation, or whatever the case may be. So that really does help. I won't say it accelerates, because this is a detailed, involved game. Even though it looks quite straightforward when you read the rules, when you start digging into the early battle portion of it, there's some detail there that you need to pay very close attention to. Now, all that said, and this is a bit of a ramble here, because I'm kind of relaxing, and I've only played the first German turn on the 23rd, and so I'm just feeling my way through this. It took me quite a while to run through all of the combats and do the movement, because I wanted to double check that what I thought I read in the rules was what I actually should be doing, and that I was applying the rules correctly, and I made substantial notes on those things, which took some time, even with my chicken scratchings. And I also then went back and reset certain parts of the battlefield here and redid those battles, or chose a different approach or attacked a different unit to see if we would get a different or better result based on the terrain or the formation that was attacking, or the defenders and what the defenders were doing, and all that sort of fun stuff. So really, I won't say I deep dove into the combat mechanics, but we did it. We ran several combats, and there were only really 3 that were of note that I kept. The others were more experimental and stuff like that. All right, so with that said, I had another point I wanted to make there about the gameplay and the scenario, but nevertheless. Anyway, I would certainly encourage you to use this scenario to learn the game mechanics. I'm not a big fan of, running through some sort of programmed gaming experience where I have to play 27 different scenarios to get to the campaign game. I like to slap that bad boy down and let's go. Let's play the campaign, because if the game rules and the mechanics and the way that everything is presented are done well, we should be able to do that. That said, with the bulge in particular, and this is nothing against any game design or designers, with the bulge in particular, given the level of detail I think it behooves us to be very careful about jumping in, boots and all, straight up. And I'm glad I brought this scenario with me. I didn't bring the full game because I probably would have got pretty frustrated with it, I think, just because there's a lot going on here. And so let's talk about what that a lot going on is and see where we get to. This is probably going to be a long video. So look, if you're not into watching the whole video, let's say that at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, I'm enjoying this quite a lot. I have lots of questions about the rules. I have lots of thoughts and comments about just the gameplay, and I'm very happy with what I'm seeing so far. However, I would have to withhold judgment because I haven't played, right? So we've done literally half a turn. So let's have a look, and let's talk about a little bit about movement and zones of control and some of the map terrain here. It's pretty interesting stuff. So there's these red-backed defensive numbers and these white-backed defensive numbers. White boxed, I will call them, right? That are filled in. Provide a different type of zone of control. Full zone of control, partial zone of control. And then you get this sneaky little bugger, which I read the rule probably, more than 3 times, and I did not see the sentence that said, if it's got a white box around it, it can have a partial zone of control if it's in an improved position. So for our purposes here, there's no zone of control here. So that's interesting in that we have these trails and then roads, and then there are major roads that are red somewhere with a black outline. And they're pretty important, and you also have to be thoughtful about how you move around in this game, just given the fact that you don't have zones of control, number one, in a lot of circumstances. And in some cases, zones of control, if you can see that terrain, see that line there, and this line here, right? That's a severe terrain hexide. So we can think of that as, I'll call them gullies, but that's not the right word for it. The word escapes me right now, but it's a steep incline and difficult terrain to maneuver through or get across, or whatever it might be, rocky or whatever the case might be. I can certainly, having done a fair bit of walking in the last 2 or 3 days up and around this area, right, our house backs onto a kind of a ravine, right, that actually ends up down in a little creek, and it then tacks on to some trails. And as you're walking around in that terrain, I was thinking about this map and how while these hexides are really frickin' annoying because they impact combat and movement, so you've got to be very thoughtful about how you're moving. And I love the fact that these maps are on larger hexes with the larger counters, because it makes it a lot easier to visualize what's going on here. And the color choices of the map are excellent as well, because it's very easy to see woods versus forest versus rough versus clear. You can discern at a glance. Then the only issue I might have is that these hex numbers are a little hard to read, but you've got the very clear font and writing for all the names of the hamlets and villages and towns and stuff like that. So anyway, I digress. So my point about all this is that as we're moving, we've got to be considering, well, supply is a factor that's going to make a big difference here. So we can't just go ramrodding our way up in, try and isolate dudes and cut them off, because you'll end up being cut off yourself as well. But I can. So, for instance, where did we go? Over here. Let me see if I can show you this. I'm going to move the camera to here. That's where we want to be. So this 2nd Panzer 3, I guess the battalion from the 1st Panzer, started over here somewhere and went by trail around and came in here behind these units, and in between this unit he came in this way because there's no zone of control here. Sorry, my hand has been shadowing. I've got not great lighting either, so apologies. And he could pass through here because this guy was over here somewhere, but he was also at full strength, but he was situated here, and we could just meandered around because I was trying to get in a situation where I could. This is Marche here, I think. Yeah. So we were trying to get this guy isolated so that we can not have to attack him because it's pretty tough. He's got a 5 there, and then he's got an armored CCA unit there with a defensive 3, so that's a defensive 8 in that hex. It's kind of tough. The odds are difficult to get in some circumstances. So this movement is very, very interesting, and it takes a lot of time and thought before you go shoving guys around the map, right? Particularly given that all these different zones of control that you need to kind of keep track of. Now, the other thing is, of course, being a bulge game, is there are all sorts of conditions around movement. There's, excuse me, there's normal movement, road movement, there's a strategic movement, there's a minimum movement, and that's also all going to be impacted by weather, of course, so whether it's mud or frozen or clear, or not clear, what's the other terminology they use here? Firm, mud, frozen, or snow. That all plays into your considerations as well. And so this is where I will say that this is not a complicated game, it's an involved game. And it's involved because your choice making is going to be reflected and influenced, I guess is the right word, influenced by the mechanics of the game. You're going to spend more time thinking about how do I go and capture this town here off in the distance? What units can I get there? How can I get them there? And then when I do get there, what type of combat power can I bring to bear? And then how am I going to keep those guys in supply? And that's kind of how I look at it. And the rules are very clear and well written and present all that information. But you've got to do the homework, and thank goodness there are a plethora of charts here. I don't like flipping through charts, but then again, I don't like chart booklets either. I like to get to the point where I can just know this stuff and not have to reference the charts. So it's a little frustrating at the get-go, but there's a plethora of charts here, often with, there's also example charts as well, that allow us to really, all I got to do is hold the 3 or 4 of these guys in my hand, reference it quickly, and think, okay, yeah, so with this armored unit, I can move along that trail paying 1 movement point. I believe that's correct, he said, just checking. Because it's frozen and I'm on a trail. Yeah, 1 movement point for armor. I can switch from normal movement to road movement with no penalty, and go from, say I was here, go to there. That's going to be 1 movement point because it's a half movement point cost. So part of me is like, why are we differentiating between normal movement and road movement? But that is what it is. Well, there's probably a reason for it that I haven't worked out yet. So march movement. So for instance, there you go, march movement. Infantry units of any type cannot be adjacent to enemy combat units at any time during the movement. So march movement is going to give you extra movement points, as will strategic movement, but then there are conditions around all that. So, okay, look, let's just keep going. So my point about all of this was in the involved nature of the game. It's built around your choice making, and for me, that makes it a rich and interesting game to play. It may well be a slow playing game from that perspective because you are going to be noodling on, what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And obviously, when you're playing your first time, you're going to be double checking yourself, make sure you get things right. So, anyway, so let's then. I just buggered all that up. Look at that. Those guys are all. I'll have to now check the setup chart, put them back where they belong. It's the front of the stand popped those guys. Let's have a look at an interesting combat that was a little frustrating for me to start with. because I didn't like the result. My camera is not sitting properly. Here we go. All right, I've got two engage markers here, and I'm going to take these off, right? So now I advanced up the road adjacent to this engineering unit who is in a clear hex in, what is that technically? That is a village. And there's a great terrain effects chart that you can see here. Big images of the terrain, which I needed so that you can see things clearly. I'm glad it's not just tacked on, although it would have been nice to have it as well, tacked on to the movement, the terrain effects chart. That would be nice, but nevertheless, just to have both so you can see things and not have to cross-check stuff. So this attack, at first glance, you go, oh, okay, cool. This 116th Panzer and this little commando dude are coming in, and they're going to attack that guy at 7-1. And we look at, and we can see there's severe terrain across that hex side. Well, that's probably not very good. Now, if there wasn't severe terrain and I was attacking in an infantry unit in clear, we would double the combat value of that guy, and we'd be attacking at 14-1 off the top of our heads here, right? But because I'm coming across severe terrain, I'm halved. So now we're looking at only a 4-1 attack, and there's this concept around. There's this lovely chart, and I'm not going to. Oh, maybe I can hold it. So there's this chart, and it's quite substantial, but it's invaluable to allow you to speed up combat resolution. And the first thing on this chart is to looking at which units would be halved if they were attacking. And so I can go down the 6 or 7 different values of that, and I can see that armor units attacking into a marsh or west wall or across severe terrain, regardless of roads, and then there's a rule reference, are going to be halved. All right, so now I know I'm halved. But then I go down here and it says, oh, look, a unit's defense value is halved if X, and then unit's defense strengths are doubled if A, B, or C. Defending you, so here's an interesting one. In a town or city, a unit's defense strength is doubled when defending in a city. Oh, I thought that had something to do with armor. Never mind. Carry on. Right. Let's see. Then there's whether artillery is halved or quartered, as the case may be. Then we get into combat odds shifts, and this is where it gets a little interesting, and there are a number of things to keep in mind, and you just need to go through this list. And I tend to not go through the sequence of play or the sequence here that they have listed, but for completeness, and so that I'm a good guy and following the rules. The very first thing we want to look at is this some sort of coordinated attack against a coordinated defense? And that is going to have a set of conditions around it, but there's a nifty little table here that will tell you that if an uncoordinated attack is being made against a coordinated defense, that's going to negatively impact the odds, and it's going to drop it down by 1. But if I have a coordinated attack against an uncoordinated defense, I'm going to get an odds shift in favor of my attacking force. So in this case, since I only have 1 unit from this division, and that's it, but you need to have 2 or more to be coordinated, and there's some other conditions as well around coordination for attacking, but let's just, for the sake of keeping things simple and not making this a 4-hour video, that's the circumstance here. And now this is an army level unit, I believe, and it is not allowed to derive any coordination benefit from this particular third armored force here. So there's no coordination benefit, which means both sides are uncoordinated. There's no modifier. So you can tell that at a glance just by looking. You're not going to need to really look anything up, and boom, off you go onto the next thing. And we would go down and we would then compare. Is that the next thing here? Oh, if there was a flanking attack, if I had another unit here coming in from this angle, that would give me a bonus DRM, but we don't have that. We've got a number of those in 2 other attacks. Let's see. Obviously, if you get ground support allocated by either for the attacker or the defender, that's going to change the mods, change the odds. Now we look at morale, 4 versus 3. So that's going to drop the odds down by 1. You know, part of me gets a little frustrated with that because I'm talking about a battalion of infantry guys hunkered down in a village. Okay, they're engineers, so maybe they're tougher, more betterer, but they're facing off against a swag Panthers here about to kick some ass and take names. And they're all out of gum as well. Side joke. So drops it down to, now I'm down to 3-1, okay? But we keep going on down here. I'm attacking a lone engineer battalion. Ha! Boom! So now we get the benefit of that because it is a lone battalion. We get us back up to 4-1. All right. So there are a number of other conditions here so it runs literally from H down through to Z, but really it's only the 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 of them that are relevant. Most of the rest are like Kampfgruppe Piper specific or 16 AM German surprise attacks. Well, there's a town defense one thrown in here that should have been up higher. If I had have organized this a little bit differently, I would have put all of the things that were turn dependent at the bottom. Because look down the bottom here, I see, look, there's German Tiger tanks, get a +1, flame tanks, stuff, right? Now we also could have used the commandos to try and execute a attack deception and picked up an odd shift there, but we didn't do that because they were unsuccessful. And then the final thing that is, interestingly enough, not on this list, and maybe I'm just missing it here somewhere, but there is a benefit if you have, he said, looking for it, combined arms. So if I had an infantry unit involved in this attack as well, then there would be a combined arms potential benefit for us, and we would pick up a DRM. It's going to be a die roll modifier. I mean, low is good, so we want a negative number for the attacker and positive numbers for the defender. So there's that, and then there's also, we would need to consider the final thing that we would look at is see this C7 here, or maybe why does that say I5? Well, now I don't know. Okay, here we go. C7. That's its armor capability versus a 0. So we would have armor superiority. If we looked at well, it actually doesn't matter for this because it's a 0, but if there was one here, so it's 7 versus 5 here. That's going to give the armor superiority benefit, if there is any, to the defender. Just based on a table here, it's got armor classes, so I can look at my armor class of a 7, which is going to be a Mark V Panther equivalence, versus Sherman's, which is a 5. That's going to go to, that's actually will be the German advantage. My apologies, I was wrong there. I did one of these earlier on, and it must have been a 6, a Mark IV Panzer, and facing off against Sherman's or M4A1s, it gives the armor superiority to the defender in that particular instance. Anyway, so that all sounds pretty freaking convoluted and involved, doesn't it? Well, it's not, because let me just walk through this with you as though we were starting from scratch. 7-1 coming across severe terrain, drops down to 4-1. Nobody's coordinated here, so there are no mods for that. We are going to get a morale bonus for these guys, drops it down to 3-1, and these guys are going to have the benefit of the fact that this is an engineering unit being attacked alone, so it goes back up to 4-1. Bob's your uncle, that's all done. Someone roll a die. And so we rolled the die, and I got whatever that result is that gets you an engaged. using the night PM CRT. I said it was a 4-to-1, so I rolled a 4, and that means they're engaged. Now, the interesting thing is, next turn, when it's the allied turn, they're going to have to either attack or retreat, and there's one other option they can do as well. They got to move 1 hex away, or and then there's a third option, which I don't recall off the top of my head. Anyway, so that's a long video. I went through, let's see, 1, 2, yeah, I went through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 combats. And the net of all this, and I'm not sure that it's worthwhile talking about what transpired as a game turn summary. I might wait until I actually do the movement and all the rest of it for the allies, and we'll wrap the first turn up, and then we'll have a chat about who did what to whom, and we'll go from there. All right, so a little bit of a long ramble, but just sharing some initial impressions. Literally the first half of a turn. Don't freak out about the rules and the charts and the setup and all the rest of it. The setup, and so that's one closing note I will make. I'm not impressed with the setup charts. They could have been done much more efficiently, I believe, and it would have sped up the setup of the game a lot, particularly combined with the fact that the counters on the counter sheets are almost literally all over the freaking place. And that slows down setup. Between those two things, it took me probably twice as long as it should have. Now, having said that, I have been spoiled by Dean Essig's massive attention to detail when it comes to counter sheet layout and where units are and setup of scenarios and things like that. So spoilt from that by that standard. Every game should always, it's like a golden rule for me anyway, your setup should start at the north side, go east to west, and then go down south. So I go to row, if this is the only unit that's going to be on row 27, then I do 27-14, and then I would do 16, and go down, and then the next counters that are going to be pulled and punched and put on the table should be on row 28 and then go down. Common sense, right? We don't want to put a unit down here and then put one down here and then put one down here and then put one down, here. We want to be consistent going across the map. That was particularly slow things down a lot. But other than that, all good. Get yourself some and go roll some dice. Ciao.